and welcome to round 2 of Narrative Telephone. For the uninitiated, here's how the game works. Our storyteller of choice will be starting us off by recording a short story. They will then send off that video to the next person who will only be able to watch it once. That person must then record themselves recounting that story to the best of their memory before sending their version off to the next person, and so on and so forth until everyone is gone. The final retelling is sure to be, well, you'll see how it goes.
Grandpa, how did you lose both your hands? Well, let me tell you, my boy. This is a story about a man named Jacques Elvacoris. This man lived in a humble house in a town known by the residents as Slen Lin. Jacques worked as a blacksmith and made 3 nice gem-ridden swords every day. One night, when Jacques was sleeping, he heard a noise outside his house in the dark. He leapt from his bed and kicked down the door, and when he did, he saw a Glen trying to steal one of his swords from outside his shop. Glens were common in these parts, always trying to steal the most expensive things they could find. Nasty little things, they always piled up all their treasure in a small cave full of yellow slime. No one could ever retrieve their treasure because the yellow slime is toxic to anyone but the Glens. As soon as Jacques saw the mischievous Glen trying to steal his stuff, he grabbed it by the neck and held it up into the air and told it to never return. Jacques drop-kicked the disgusting creature out into the woods and took his 3 new made blades into his house. He placed them under his bed and went back to sleep. When he awoke the next morning, he realized that the swords were gone. He looked outside and saw a trail of yellow slime leading from his front door out into the woods. Jacques grabbed his walking stick and rushed after the trail. After almost 4 hours, he finally made it to the Glen cave. He saw a massive pile of treasure not very deep within, covered in yellow slime. He reached for a glowing book right in the front of the pile, but his hands started burning. He kept on digging through the pile, weapon after weapon, book after book, and he searched for his blades. 70 minutes went by, and he finally found his 3 swords. He ran back to his home and placed them within a secret compartment in his walls. His hands ached with the poison deep within his skin. The next day, he had no hands left. Just a stump on his arms. And that, my boy, is how I lost both me hands.
Grandpa, how did you lose both your hands? Well, me boy, let me tell you a story. And then, for some reason, all of a sudden it goes out of first person, and he's just telling the story as the narrator rather than as the grandpa. But anyway, there's something about a man named Jacques, I can't remember his last name, and he was a blacksmith, and every day he would make 3 swords with gems in them, like master crafted blacksmith swords. And then for some reason later in the story he's not making them every day, but whatever. One day, wait, no, it was in the middle of the night. He woke up and he heard a noise, and so he went and kicked open his door, and he found some kind of gerblin called a Glen was stealing his swords, and he followed it back to its cave. And a Glen is a creature that hoards treasure in a cave, and they have this yellow slime in their residences. And he followed it back, and he fought it. I don't remember if he fought it, but he picked it up by the throat and threatened it and said, if you ever, or don't ever come back to my place again. And he grabbed his swords and went back home, and then he hid his swords under his bed. And then when he woke up the next morning, the swords were gone, and he saw a trail of yellow slime going back to where the Glen's cave had been, and so he followed it back there again, and he searched through piles of treasure, and there was a book, and it was glowing with magic, and he tried to reach out, and he felt his hands start burning as he was digging through this yellow slime and through the treasure. And after, I think he said 70 minutes, which was a weird amount of time, I thought, but after 70 minutes he found his swords. And this is the part where I was starting to question, like, I thought he said he made 3 swords every day, so how come he's just recovering these 3 swords over and over and that's it? So I don't know. Anyway, but he got those 3 swords and he went back home and he hid them in the walls, which is also very strange to do. but then like his hands were burning, and then in the next morning his hands were gone, and they had been burned away from, he said it was poison, but it sounds like acid to me. But anyway, his hands were gone from the poison. It was hand removing poison. And then he said, and that, me boy, is how I lost me hands. The end.
Oh no. Okay. Grandpa, how did you lose your hands? Oh, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you, my boy. Okay, and then it goes into like just out of first person. Anyway, so there was a blacksmith named Jacques who made these 3 master-crafted swords with gems in the hilt, and they were so nice and glorious and expensive. Anyway, so he made these great swords, and then one night there was a I don't remember if he saw it happen. Anyway, he heard a noise in the night, and then he went to go investigate, and then he saw a gerblin running off with his swords. So he followed it, and the gerblin was named Glen, or it was a kind of a goblin named Glen. Anyway, it was a kind of a thing that hid treasure in a cave, and they liked to have a treasure hoard. So they stole his really nice swords. So he went and he got his swords back somehow. He probably beat up the Glen or something. Anyway, so he got his swords back. Oh, also in the cave, the Glens have like this yellow slime stuff that they secrete, I guess. So they're not at all a goblin, but it may be a gerblin. Anyway, so then he goes back home, and then he hid his swords underneath his bed, and I guess went back to sleep. Then in the morning when he woke up, his swords were gone, and he saw yellow slime leading to the Glen's cave again. So he went, and then I know there was one more time that this happened, but I don't remember. So anyway, so he went, and then he found this like pile of gems and treasure and stuff, and it was all covered in that yellow goo, and so he had to start digging through the goo to try to find his swords, but it like started making his hands burn and stuff, and so then he found, after 70 minutes of digging, he found his swords, and then he took them back home and hid them in his walls for some reason, I guess, to protect them. But then how you can't even use them then. Anyway, so he hid them in his walls, and then his hands hurt really bad from the yellow goop, which was poison, that was hand removing poison. And so then that was how he lost his hands. The end.
Okay, so I'm telling a story that was a retelling of a story. And it goes a little bit like this. There's a boy who's talking to his grandfather. Or maybe it's a girl, but it sounded like a boy. Anyway, so he asks the grandfather, how did you lose your hands? And so the grandfather says that he's going to tell him the story. So he says there was this man named Jacques, or Jacques. Anyway, Jack if it was American, but Jacques, like Cousteau. Anyway, and he was a master blacksmith, sword maker, and he made swords, 3 of them, and he took them home with him. And they were beautiful. They were very, like he was master, so obviously they were very, very well balanced and of good metal and sharp and all that. But they also had jewels and gold and all that kind of folderol, which seems excessive to me, because unless it's just a ceremonial sword, in which case who would care if it was sharp, then why would you need all the jewels and stuff? Because that just weights it down and makes it less able to be used in battle. But I'm not a master swordsmith, so I don't know these things. Anyway, there he was with these swords, and at his house. Maybe they were for someone, and he would, I don't know. We didn't hear any of that in the original story, so you'll have to kind of use your imagination on that as to why he even bothered making these jewelry swords. But there it is, and he has them, and so I believe he was going to bed, and this Gerblin, which to me is like, is it a gremlin? Is it a goblin? What is it? I don't know. Could somebody just have, you know, like a speech impediment? But I don't know. Some kind of something that wasn't human, apparently, came and stole them. And his name was Glenn, and then there was something about Glen. So maybe there's a Glenn, and this is the son of Glenn called Glen, but who knows. At any rate, there he is, and he took the swords and skittered off. And Jacques chased after him, and he went into some secret cave where they hide all their loot, like a dragon or like a goblin. I think they have hoards of gold or something, don't they? I don't know. Anyway, so he took it there and left it and left. And Jacques found them and gathered them back up and took them back. As he went, he saw there was yellow kind of slug slime, oozy goozy kind of stuff all around, and that was something that this particular Gerblin horde, Gerblin batch, what do you call a group of Gerblins? I don't know. Anyway, they oozed out this stuff. That sounds unsanitary, but there you are. So he notices he's leaving, and he goes back to his house, and he hides the swords under his bed, and he goes back to bed and sleeps well throughout the night. And when he wakes up in the morning, he goes under his bed to get the swords out, presumably to deliver them to whoever he made them for, or just to drool over them, whatever his desire was there. And they weren't there. And so he goes instead, he sees the yellow slug slime, oozy goozy stuff, and says, and he follows the trail of ooze and back to that same old cave again. And there they are, there's this huge pile of loot, all covered with slime. So he starts to dig through it, and he eventually finds one of his swords and then another sword, and he feels his hands, kind of tingling and burning. And he doesn't get a clue, apparently, keeps digging through, and eventually finds all three swords. And then he goes back to his house with them, and he hides them in his walls. Now, to me, this is kind of like when somebody collects something, like Beanie Babies or something like that, and they have them all displayed with their little cases and everything, but yet they never play with them or they never use them. And to me, why have them? I guess if it brings you joy to just sit and look at them. But he isn't even going to be able to look at these swords because they're behind the wall. Like, I think he plastered over them to hide them. But why didn't he just deliver them to the person that they were for? And if they were for him, why? I don't know. Anyway, so he's got these swords plastered into his wall, and they bring nobody any joy or merit, but he's feeling really confident and proud of himself that he got them back, apparently. And then, what happens? Well, he wasn't paying attention to his hands. I had that happen once, right here. Can we see that? There we go. Let's see. Yeah, see that white spot right there? That was oven cleaner that burnt into me. I was cleaning an oven once, and I started feeling a little bit like it was a little uncomfortable burning, and I thought, okay, well, I'll get rid of that in a minute, because I was wiping out the oven after I had sprayed the cleaner and stuff, and I didn't take care of it right away, and then it actually burnt a hole in my arm a little bit. Kind of made me think about sin and how, you gotta take care of it right away. Anyway, he didn't take care of his hands right away with the yellow slime on them, and they just disintegrated, and that's why he had no hands. Long story to tell your grandson. And then does the grandson say, well, hey, then do you want me to knock one of those swords out of the wall and get you some medicine or something? I don't know, some artificial limb at least. Well, we'll see in part 2 of the story. That's all I have for you. Bye.